You are listening to One Nation Under Crime, a historical, chronological true crime podcast. Each week, we go through our nation's history and discuss one case from each year, starting in 1800. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Leah.
We are back.
We're back.
Back in black. Not necessarily.
No.
No.
Well, Kayla,
well,
for
me,
sure.
yes, all the time.
For sure.
All the time in
I'm
black.
wearing a bright
corally
yeah.
with a hedgehog. It's very fitting.
It's a hedgehog. My mommy got it for me.
We took a break. We had and what's funny
you
is
missed a Hamilton reference.
That is true.
How dare you?
I mean,
where's your mind?
Go away with us for the summer. Let's go upstate where we can stay.
Oh anyway. Gosh, I've unleashed.
I mean,
okay.
So yes, and for those of you who don't know, we actually recorded a bunch of episodes like ahead of time. So we took a longer break than most people probably realize. Yes. We have not recorded in a month.
Yep. Sweet Fletcher did not know what to do when I busted up in the door. He was just all over me. Y'all, I was giving a kissy face. He licked. I kissed his tongue. It was a thing.
He's fine with it. He
was fine.
He was like, let it happen. Let it happen.
It was a moment for me. It was a moment.
It's been a month since we recorded last, and we've had so many things go on. I have now been to a wedding.
Yes.
Someone at the wedding is now engaged.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Congrats to all involved. You know who you are. I'm not going to say your names. One of them has goats. Yeah, precious.
I love goats.
Precious goats.
By the way, I have a tin goat. His name is Blueberry. Blackberry.
Yes. Blackberry.
I don't know my own goat's name.
But they have goats. They're the ones that just got engaged. They are precious. Congratulations to them.
I would like to come visit your goats.
You could. They have an Airbnb.
Let's go.
So, yes. So they recently got engaged. So yeah, like lots of changes. We went to a wedding, and the next week, one of the couples we were with at the wedding got engaged.
That's
and
so exciting.
Her ring's absolutely gorgeous. It's so pretty. And we were sitting at the wedding, and I was talking to her, and I was talking to someone else too, and they were like, so what do you do and everything? And I was kind of saying what I do. And all of a sudden, because she's sitting to like the left of me, she goes, she also has a podcast. And I was like, yes, I do. So she knows who she is. Hello. And so
thank you for that shout out.
Yes. So she and her engagement ring is gorgeous. I mean,
I love some sparkle.
It is the sparkliest sparkle you've seen, and so it's precious. And
I love love. So,
I know that's true. So we went to that wedding. It was really fun. We went to a bar after the wedding, and
now, this is Kayla, not me. I was not involved in the wedding. I was here at home.
This was this wedding was so much fun, and we went to a bar after the wedding, and that's how you know that it's me. When I'm speaking. And so this guy and the same girl that I'm talking about, we'll call her E. And we went to this bar afterwards, and all of a sudden I turn, there's a dog sitting in a seat by the bar. And I was like,
I need to see this dog.
Oh my God, that's a dog. And my boyfriend, knowing me, turns around a minute later and sees me petting the dog and becoming friends. The dog's name was Sage. The dog was precious. So, fits into my aesthetic perfectly because its name was Sage.
That's a way to get me to come over and talk to somebody.
So the guy, we're sitting there and we're talking, like I'm petting the dog. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's its name? Oh my God. Also, I've had like 6 drinks by this point.
Oh, fun time, Kayla.
So much fun. And so the guy goes, he's talking. He's like, oh, where are y'all staying?
Did you share?
Hindsight's always, no. So I just said Clearwater because we technically we were staying in Clearwater and loved it. You know how I am with outside, and we were on the bay, but not on the beach. So I loved it because we could sit right there and there was nothing in front of us. It was just the water. So it was perfect. But
you didn't have like sand on your feet?
No, and I can't stand sand. My boyfriend
I love
says
being in the
that
sand.
my boyfriend says I'm crazy, but I was like, I can't.
I agree with him.
So there was side story. The hotel to the left of us, they had like beach chairs set up all along this wall that backed up to the base. So you could kind of like sit on the wall and hang your legs over, and the water would just barely touch your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Or there were all these chairs, and so there were like...
I kind of don't trust that, though.
Well, there were tons of people like laying out on the edge, and he goes, come out here and look at this. And I go out there and I look over, and I was like, to be honest, they have it figured out. You're in the sun. You can touch the water. There's no sand. There is a waiter who is bringing you drinks. I don't know who these people are, but they're geniuses, honestly. And it was so good. But so we were staying in Clearwater, and the guy at the bar, he's like, oh, that's so cool. You know how when you see someone and like, this is not as... Stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason.
Unfortunately.
Like we're Southern, we understand stereotypes better than anyone.
But we have all of our teeth. We do wear shoes.
We don't marry our cousins.
Usually.
We don't. Look,
I married out of county. My daddy went out of country to bring in new blood. I'm just saying.
My mom's adopted, and we don't know who her family is. So we'll see.
Listen, her daughter is very smart. She does not have any sort of, it doesn't look like she has any sort of defects or anything. So I think we're safe.
But this guy, he goes, yeah, that's really cool. And my boyfriend goes, he sized you up in 2 seconds. Because he goes, did you know that Clearwater is owned, 90% of it is owned by Scientologists? And I went, tell me more.
Stop it.
And my boyfriend goes, all right. Just like grabs me and pulls me away. And he goes, Kayla, you have got to pay closer attention. And I was like, he was really nice. He had a dog. And he goes, he knows what he was doing with the dog. How do you not know this? And I was like,
dog is dirty.
The dog was so cute. It was in a bar stool chair. Oh my gosh, it's like this little white precious, like almost like a King Charles, but not quite. But like
my Penny.
Oh no, but it was
sorry.
White. It was white, and it was not.
Did you just throw some shade at Penny?
It doesn't look at all like Penny because it was like a cross between like a King Charles Cavalier Springer Spaniel. But something that also made it white because I've never seen one that's white. And it
King Charles Cavalier Spaniels can be white.
Well, its name was Sage, and apparently I was almost trafficked.
That Sage was dirty.
I was apparently almost trafficked. Hindsight, as I said, always 2020. Mm-hmm. Looking back, he might have tried to take me. That might have been, as I told my boyfriend, I was like, no, like he looks totally fine. The next morning, he goes, you remember that guy last night? And I go, yeah. And he goes, now looking back, did he look totally fine? And I was like, oh no, he looked like he'd keep me in the basement. And he goes, this is why I can't trust you. And I was like, but the dog, and I was like, it was sitting in E's lap because I turned around like 2 minutes later and E is sitting there like with the dog in her lap, like petting the dog and everything. And I go, why can she pet the dog and I can't? And my boyfriend goes, because you're easily persuaded and she's not. I was like, I do not subscribe to this fallacy that you are trying to portray of me, sir. I don't agree.
Oh my gosh. All it takes is a dog.
That's what he said. He goes, apparently all it takes is a dog. And you're just like, yes, sir, I'll climb into your creepy non-windowless panel van.
I mean.
And I'm like, well.
All it takes is a dog. I mean, no candy.
It's fine.
It's a dog.
It's fine. This is just, it should already be known anyways. But
welcome back,
to
the podcast, guys.
We're back.
We have stories galore.
I'm now back in the mindset of serial killers after my experience. So my close call. I mean, but honestly, if somebody comes up to me at the bar and they're like, let me tell you about Scientology, I'm like, tell me everything.
Stop it. I'd be like,
I want to know, are you a part of it? I need everything. But
I've seen Tom Cruise jumping on Oprah's couch. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
I'll say this. Super nice guy.
Oh, sure.
Anyways. So, you know, John Travolta is too.
Sure.
But we all love Leah Remini, who had to go and she did the whole show on
She's got a great name.
And I love her anyways. She's really funny in general too.
I love her accent so much.
Just as a person, she's super funny. So that's what I've been doing since we last recorded. So, you know, that's my life. But we are going into an interesting case this week. It pulls from some of the same aspects of other cases that we have covered in the past.
Ooh, I like it when we link things.
No, you don't, because
I don't like this one.
We are once again discussing Irish immigrants.
Oh, no.
So that tells you where we're going. And I have to...
Prejudices.
Yes. And I have to shout out a specific source that I used.
Not Pacific, because that's an ocean.
Correct. And I have to say this source I actually got a lot of information from, and the title of it is going to tell you exactly what the case is about.
Oh.
So, it's a book. You can purchase it. You can purchase it on Amazon. It is very good as far as covering this case. And it is called The Hanging and Redemption of John Gordon, the true story of Rhode Island's last execution by Paul F. Caranci. And I hope that I said that last name right. I believe it's It's either Caranci or Caranci.
Okay.
So I might go back and forth between both, but that is his name. It's a very good book. There's actually an article, one of the sources, it's called Small State, Big History, that he actually wrote that article as well and pulled a lot of excerpts from his book. So there are going to be times where I'm going to say, like, this is what Paul Caranci says about this, because he did a lot of in-depth research into this case, has a lot of really good information, and there are going to be times where I'm going to say, this is legitimately straight from his book as like his ideas and what he thought happened, because he's just looked into it so well. There's not a better way to say it than what he said. So
why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. Gotcha. So our sources, we have the New England Historical Society. I've used this before.
I was going to say, you've used them a lot.
A lot. Mm-hmm. And such a good resource. Then, as I said, Small State, Big History. And then the one website that always puts me at the top of the NSA list.
Murder by Gaslight?
You got it.
Oh, look at me.
So, our events, we are in 1843 this week. Our events, January of 1843, the old chestnut, Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh.
You know I love him. I love him.
Interesting character.
Yes. His short story, The Telltale Heart, was published in January of 1843. Then February 1st, the Mutual Life Insurance Company of New York opened, and it is now the oldest continuous writer of insurance in the United States.
That's near and dear to our hearts.
In case you're ever on Jeopardy and you need to know that. So, March 3rd, Congress appropriated $30,000 to, quote, test the practicability of establishing a system of electromagnetic telegraphs by the U.S. March 7th, Edward Kavanaugh was elected as the governor of Maine, which, as a tie to our story this week, made him the first Catholic governor in the United States.
Interesting. That's a big deal.
I love Catholics. Some of them. Anyway, we've all seen the news in the past couple of years. Not those. Not the ones on the news. But I have a lot of friends who are Catholic. So, anyways, there also a lot of them are Irish. I also share Irish ancestry. Yep. So possibility. Anyways, March 21st. Past me is hilarious. This is the date.
Past me. I love it.
This is the date that preacher William Miller first predicted that the world would end. And I just put
he was wrong. ...
It did not.
Nope. Guess again.
Obviously. May 22nd, the first major wagon train for the northwest part of America set out on the Oregon Trail with about 1,000 people.
Is that the one that set out from Missouri? Where did it set out from?
Yes.
Okay, I've been there.
So, July 1st, Ulysses S. Grant graduated from West Point, 21st in his class. Would you like to guess how many were in the
21
class?
In the class?
39.
Okay. Well,
but still.
At least he wasn't last.
I love the slight shade. He graduated from West Point. Now that would be super impressive. Like 21st in his class, and then they just put of 39. I mean.
But he did pretty well for himself.
You know, he seemed to. You will find great humor in this, and this is the reason that it is included, strictly for you.
Just for me?
For you.
Oh, you're so kind.
July 2nd.
Okay. Uh-oh.
An alligator.
Oh, my.
Fell from the sky.
Oh, my.
During a thunderstorm in your favorite place on earth, Charleston, South Carolina. The papers reported that the 2-foot-long alligator,
oh my gosh,
quote, had a look of wonder and bewilderment about him.
He said, what the crap? What happened here?
Which is no surprise after his wild ride on a thunderstorm described as so terrible, quote, the whole firmament growled thunder and shot lightning, which burst overhead with a power that shook the solidest of structures. Reports stated that the gator, quote, was doing as well as an alligator could be expected to do under the circumstances.
Poor guy.
I mean...
But, you know, when I taught...
He's the original Sharknado.
I mean...
He is the original Gatornado.
But listen, when I taught, I had a weather book of just odd weather, and there was a rainstorm that it rained frogs. Like, it literally rained frogs. So
an alligator fell from the sky.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing
that. I love that the paper said... He's doing as well as an alligator could be expected to do.
Can be expected. That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's my favorite fact. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay, we have to. Favorite fact: alligator falling from the sky, doing as well as he could expected be to do, or bipedal tailless beaver.
Alligator
shutting down the telescope of which that found him to then wander the streets and be made into a hat of women who were then protesting a trial.
No, I was just meaning on this episode.
I'm just saying.
I'm just meaning on this episode.
Right,
Thank you for putting that tidbit in for me on this episode.
I'll let the beavers know.
I'm just meaning on this episode.
Look, I have a creek in my backyard. I don't need an uprising.
What if the alligator and the beavers join forces?
You should write that as a book, TM.
Ooh, let's do it.
A beaver, tailless and bipedal from outer space, and an alligator that fell from the sky become best friends because they are unlikely friends who also both came from the sky.
And unexpectedly dropped in.
Then they both form an alliance to destroy a telescope.
Yes.
So that the beaver's family cannot be found.
Because the alligator has to explain some things about Earth.
Yes.
That's the alliance. That's what it is.
Then they form a home in my backyard.
Boom. Done.
TM.
Yes. Done.
We will sue you if anyone else comes up with this idea.
Because it's a hot one.
With our $0.
Now we're going to get some money.
I mean, you know. So, July 12th, in the total opposite direction, Joseph Smith claimed to receive a revelation from God calling for polygamy in the LDS church. Just wait until next week. August 19th, Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Black Cat, was first published in the Saturday Evening Post.
I had a black cat.
Well, I guess I technically do. The one that comes to the front porch.
Yeah.
He's our friend. Did I tell you about the day that I walked into the living room after walking into my bedroom to make up the bed? Turn around, walk back into the living room, and I see my daughter, Ellie, standing at the door open, just as if we run the power company. And there is a black cat standing in the middle of my living room. Guys, I do not have a black cat.
You do now.
And this is our friend, the black cat, that comes to visit the front porch, and we feed him. He's very sweet. He or she, I can't say that. It has a polka dotted collar. His name is also Blake, but I also know Blake Lively, so I don't know.
Sure.
We'll go with they. So they come to our front porch all the time. You never know. So anyways, Blake found themselves in the middle of my living room one day. And I was like,
because your daughter is Giselle.
You don't belong here. So that was fun. So August 23rd, Mexican President Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna announced that the annexation of Texas by the United States would be considered an act of war by Mexico.
Ruh-roh.
August 26th, Charles Thurber patented the typewriter. October 13th, Henry Jones and 11 others founded the B'nai B'rith. I believe that's how you say it. I am not Jewish, so sorry. But it is the oldest Jewish service organization in the world.
Oh.
December 4th, Manila Paper, which makes sails, canvases, and ropes and everything, was first patented in Massachusetts. December 19th, A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens was published and sold 6,000 copies.
That is my mom's favorite Christmas movie. She wants to watch it every Christmas season.
I don't know what my favorite Christmas movie would be.
I love Elf and I love A Christmas Story. Both of those I love to watch.
See, that's very fitting for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know what my favorite of all favorites would be. Up there is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
That's pretty good too.
Why is the carpet wet? I don't know, Margot.
We went to a Sunday school Christmas party, and it was National Lampoon's themed, and Michael and I went as Todd and Margot. I found the little workout suits.
I could see you being Margot, honestly.
Gosh.
For those who don't know, who have not seen Leah, she does with her today it's straight, but with her hair curly, which it is naturally, she does akin to Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and I can see that as well.
Yeah.
I just love Uncle Eddie. He's like, look at there.
Yeah.
Look at there, Clark. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It was very fun. Of course, my brother-in-law is in our Sunday school class, and he came as Uncle Eddie. He had the hat, and he had
with
the
robe.
He did.
The robe.
He had the robe.
Oh gosh, that's the best.
It was great.
That is the best.
It was great. My sister may have come as the cat. It was fantastic.
Somebody needed to go as the squirrel. It's in the tree. Anyways,
no, it was the cat that was in.
The squirrel was in the tree. Yeah, but the cat was the one that was inside the. Yeah, right. That's probably one of my favorites, just because it is.
It's just so crazy.
It is. I like Elf. I do like Elf. I think Elf is funny. I don't know. It's just.
And my 3-year-old nephew will call you a cotton-headed ninny muggins, but he doesn't quite say it exactly right. That is funny.
Oh gosh. Anyways, December 25th, speaking of Christmas, the first theater matinee opened at the Olympic Theater in New York City. Our births for 1843, January 10th, we have Frank James. He was an American outlaw in the James Younger Gang, and he is the older brother of Jesse James.
I was going to ask, is this any kin to Jesse?
He is a Capricorn. We will talk about the James Younger gang later on, as they will probably take up an entire episode. Maybe one if we're lucky, but could be two. So April 14th, William Henry Jackson was born. He's an American photographer, painter, and explorer who is famous for his images of the American West.
Cool.
Also, fun fact, he is the great nephew of Samuel Wilson, the influence for Uncle Sam.
Ah, very cool.
Go back to our December USBS episodes to hear all about Uncle Sam. And he is an Aries. Then we have September 25th, Melville. This is just a fun name, to be honest, all the way around.
I mean, you started with Melville. I'm hooked.
Melville Reuben Bissell.
Oh, yes.
He's an entrepreneur and inventor of the carpet sweeper, the prequel to the vacuum cleaner, a.k.a. the Bissell.
I was going to ask if it had to do with vacuum.
That's him. He's a Libra. November 11th, we have Cornelius Vanderbilt II. He is an American socialite and a member of the prominent Vanderbilt family. He is said to be the favorite grandson of Mr. Vanderbilt himself.
That's a tough role, being the favorite.
Well, it's a tough job being a Vanderbilt right now. Our thoughts go out to all nurses across the United States right now, who are currently dealing with the implications of everything that has recently happened. We greatly think about you, and you are wonderful. All nurses are wonderful for everything that you do. Lord knows I could not do those things. So you are wonderful. You are needed. Do not let the decisions of one organization take away your sparkle. As Leah says, you are all
pink starburst.
There you go. So he is a Scorpio, and our deaths in 1843. January 11th. The end of an era.
Oh, dear.
Francis Scott Key. He was a lawyer and the author of the Star Spangled Banner. He was also a lawyer in the wonderful case that we covered.
A star-studded case.
A star-studded case, if there ever was one.
I really think that's my favorite episode, just because of all the names that came out.
It's a funny one, that's for sure. April.
What? Who?
I know. It's just like the names just keep coming.
Yes.
April 17th, we have Samuel Morey. He holds the earliest patent for an internal combustion engine, as well as 19 other patents.
That's a lot of patents.
It's a lot. May 28th, Noah Webster. You may know him as the Merriam-Webster Dictionary guy. He died. November 10th, John Trumbull, known as the painter of the Revolution. If you listen to the Hamilton remix, there is a song on it called This Is No John Trumbull. It's that John Trumbull, in case anybody was wondering. So on to our case this week. We barely caught 1843 in this one because December 31st of 1843.
The last day.
Amasa, as the days of the year do go, yes. Amasa Sprague was found in the road between his mansion and factory, murdered, and 3 Irish brothers, Nicholas, William, and John Gordon, were named immediate suspects.
So they weren't just found walking nearby and they said, oh, you're the ones that did it.
We will see.
Oh, they were found walking nearby.
They were not.
I called it.
They were not. They were actually not found walking nearby.
Okay.
So our story this week is
they were found riding nearby.
They were nowhere nearby. That's what's even worse.
Oh, no.
Our story this week is in Smithfield, Rhode Island. It is a precious little town with historic villages. This area was first settled in 1636 as a farming community by British colonists. It did share the original area of Province, Rhode Island until 1731, when Smithfield was incorporated as a separate town. It was named after Smithfield, London. During the Industrial Revolution, Smithfield transformed from an agrarian community to a manufacturing center, with several textiles and mills being founded. Yep, founded. That's not it. Yep, nope. We're going to say built. They were built.
The companies were founded, but the building.
Yep, that's apparently where my mind was going. They were along.
Nope.
Along the Wanna-Susquatucket River.
Wow, say that again.
Nope. By the mid 1800s. There is a colonial ghost town of Hampton City that is located within the boundaries of present-day Smithfield.
Nope.
But was a completely separate community in the 18th century. And if you know me, which you should by now, you know that I looked into Hampton City.
Of course you did.
It is known by the locals as the Lost City, and today the remains consist of a few stone foundations, a burial site, and a defunct dam, which provided irrigation for the city, as well as a few deteriorating stone walls. The area is very overgrown, and in fact, if you didn't know what you were looking for, you might not even be able to see it. Hampton City was very isolated, and there are a couple of theories of how it even came to exist. One theory is that those who founded Hampton City were loyalists. You can also become a loyalist on our Patreon page. But it's unclear whether they were forced to live in exile by the Rhode Island Patriots or whether they choose to form an enclave of like-minded people. Several Tories, which are American colonists that supported the British, in case anybody's forgot. We talked about them before, but they're from Newport and they were exiled to Smithfield and Gloucester in 1776. The most likely theory, according to local historian Jim Ignatier,
that's a name.
It is that Hampton City was first settled by three English families, the Paynes, the Hantons, and the Shippies, who possibly were given land as a payment for service in King Philip's War, which lasted from 1675 to 1676. And the last of the Hampton family members is said to still be there, although they died in 1900. And for anyone who isn't familiar with ghost towns, we're about to talk about them.
I'm so shocked.
They are also called deserted cities or abandoned cities. There are a few requirements that have to be in place for a town to qualify as a ghost town. There have to be a substantial visible remains from some sort of infrastructure. You'll notice that I said before, Hampton City could almost be missed if there's any type of overgrowth in the area. However, due to the age of this specific city, it's pretty common, especially depending on how long it's been a ghost town and if that area is kind of a regular path for people. If not, if people don't regularly come in that area, they're not going to keep it up. There's going to be more, land's just not going to really look the same as it did before. So any kind of overgrowth in the spring or in the summer, this one could actually be missed. There are many reasons that a town will fall into being a ghost town. Many of them are boom towns that were established to accommodate an influx of workers. During an economic boom, typically it's agricultural or industrial. Once the resources in that area are depleted, then people move on and the town is left with nothing.
Do you know what I think of when I think of a ghost town? Well, I think of the Brady Bunch episode when they see a ghost town when they're going out west. But a ghost town I always think of out west. When they had the gold rush out west. The towns came up, but then when the gold was gone, the towns were gone.
Oh, we're about to talk about some of them.
But that's what I think of. But of course, I think of the Brady Bunch episode when they went to a ghost town because, of course, I think of a Brady Bunch episode. Of course. So, there you go. And you probably never watched any episodes of the Brady Bunch. No, I did. Okay, good.
I did. George Glass. Same as George Glass.
I think he's John Brady.
Anyway. The town could also be a victim of a natural disaster, such as a flood, an earthquake, extreme winters and summers, or a major drought. But we also have war, pollution, nuclear disasters,
Chernobyl.
government actions, think of Waco, or just uncontrolled crime. Sometimes ghost towns consist of many abandoned buildings, as in Bodie, California, or standing ruins, as in Rhyolite, Nevada, while elsewhere only the foundations of former buildings remain, as in Graysonia, Arkansas, or Hampton City, Rhode Island. Old mining camps that have lost most of their population at some stage of their history, such as Aspen, Deadwood, Oatman, Tombstone, and Virginia City. They are also sometimes referred to as ghost towns, although they are presently active towns and cities. It could be due to tourism that it isn't considered a ghost town. Right. But it makes me kind of wonder, if it's not a ghost town, then what is the actual residential population versus just the tourism?
I was going to ask that. Is it a ghost town because people don't really live there?
I think that's the difference, because it doesn't make much sense, because we know Tombstone and Deadwood are like very, especially
Huckleberry.
Aspen. Like Aspen is not a ghost town by any term. But many ghost towns in the U.S., such as South Pass City in Wyoming, are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Some of the earliest settlements in the U.S., though they no longer exist in a tangible sense, once had the characteristics of a ghost town. There are locations in the U.S. that used to be ghost towns that are actually non-existent.
That's sad.
Such as in 1590, when map maker John White arrived at the Roanoke colony in North Carolina to find it deserted, its inhabitants gone, and we know this as the famous Croatoan carving on the tree. So then that is when the Zwandiel colony became a ghost town, when every one of the colonists were murdered in 1632. Can't imagine why no one would want to go live there afterward.
I mean...
Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in the Americas, was abandoned when Williamsburg became the new capital of the colony in 1699. There was an attempt to declare a ghost town in Southern California in 2002. However, it was stalled when an argument broke out as to whether the town of Bodie or the town of Calico were best suited for this recognition. It's kind of an odd thing to want to be known for, is... Which one is the ghost town?
I want to be a ghost town.
No, I want to be the ghost town.
Why can't you both be ghost towns?
Well, funny you say that, because a compromise between the two towns was reached, and Bodie became known as California's official Gold Rush ghost town, and Calico was named as the state's official Silver Rush ghost town.
There you go.
There are a ton of ghost towns in the U.S. that are super interesting. I think I'm going to make it a series on Patreon. Hint, hint. Because a lot of them do have like really fascinating history of how they started and where they went and how they actually became a ghost town. And there's like several that are in Alabama that aren't known of. Like there's a lot of ghost towns that even historical ones like Tombstone and Aspen and Deadwood, like those also, they're considered ghost towns. So we might actually do that as a series. So pretty interesting things that come along with that. But back to Smithfield, Rhode Island. We are specifically in the little community of Sprogville, which doesn't have any clear defined borders on the Greenland side of town. Sprogville was settled in 1733 by Abraham Smith, who erected a grist mill and 2 houses. However, the area is named for Thomas Sprogg, a former sea captain who came to Smithfield nearly a century later. Sometime after 1824, Sprogg built a large granite cotton mill, which measured 80 by 120 feet, and established T. Sprogg and Sons. According to old maps of the town, the mill stood on the north side of the Mountaindale Road in the area now occupied by present-day Richard Street. The mill originally drew its power from the Stillwater River, but in 1870, steam turbines were installed. Today, it is a modern industrial park, which in its heart of Spragueville, but sadly, like most things in this world, and I just put, remember, the Rust Belt. The historic factories that gave the area its rightful place in Rhode Island history are gone.
Yeah, well.
It is outside of one of these factories in 1843 that Amasa. He's got a very interesting name.
Amasa.
So Amasa Sprague was the one found brutally murdered. So yes, Spragueville and the murder victim of our story have the same name for a reason. So I thought that was quite interesting. This is a pretty tumultuous time for Rhode Island politically and socially. You see, the Constitution of Rhode Island had extreme requirements for voting. And this is probably because they were still using the guidelines from their colonial charter in 1663.
White male landowner.
Just a casual 173 years prior to this. Just still same rules.
But was I right?
Yes.
White male landowner.
If you wanted to take to the polls, then you had to be a white male who specifically owned property.
Yep.
So
look at me, I knew it.
Roughly 1/3 of the white males in the area could vote.
Dun, 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 dun.
This is not to say anyone should really feel sorry for them.
Nope.
I put ... because patriarchy.
I mean,
but this did create a massive rift between the upper and lower class.
I mean, change was needed.
The upper class did own property and therefore had the votes they needed for any election to go their way. Enter Thomas Dorr, stage right.
Dun, da, 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 da.
Dorr started a movement that was based on the intent of the Declaration of Independence, which stated that all power belonged to the people. In 1841, the Dorrites, the name that Thomas Dorr's followers gave themselves, drafted the People's Construction that included a Bill of Rights and granted voting rights to all white males. Let's not talk about how that's still problematic.
I mean,
but
it's a step.
Either way.
It needs to be a little better. But
it was put to a vote and overwhelmingly passed when men were all allowed to vote. A mix of conservative Whigs and Democrats formed the Law and Order Party and had the Constitution declared illegal by the state Supreme Court. But the Dorrites had already set up a rival government based on the new Constitution, and of course, Thomas Dorr was the governor. When the Dorr Rebellion occurred, the Dorrites attempted to capture the state arsenal in Providence, Rhode Island, and they were defeated, and Thomas Dorr fled the state.
Can I tell you that his name is problematic for me?
It's Dorr.
But still.
Yes.
It's problematic.
When he returned after some time, he was arrested and sentenced to life in prison.
Well,
simultaneously, Rhode Island saw a massive increase in Irish Catholic immigrants moving into the area, and they were seeking work in factories.
Well, they had a lot of them.
You may have wondered how all of this ties in, and you know me, so it does. Anyway.
I figured you had a plan. I figured you were going somewhere.
Everyone was really eager to accept the Irish to work for them, but that didn't mean that they were equal to those considered the ruling elite.
No.
Because of this, the Dorr Rebellion had massive support from the Irish community. Amos Sprague was a member of the ruling class. He had a brother, William, who went on to become a U.S. Senator. The Sprague brothers owned a textile mill, and they started the business with their father, William Sprague Sr. Sprague. Makes me think of a frog. They also owned several cotton mills in Rhode Island, but their most profitable factory was a printwork factory that specialized in printed calico prints in Spragueville. The A&W Sprague Company employed most residents of Spragueville, and wouldn't you know, they also owned the tenement housing that their employees had to rent.
Shocking. Surprising.
Oh,
Maybe? No.
they also owned the company store where the employees had to shop.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
That's pretty much, that's usually how it worked.
Amasa Sprague was actively opposed to the Dorites and was instrumental in Dorr's arrest. Seeing as most of the new workers coming in were Irish Catholics who were in support of the Dorites, you can see how this could become problematic.
Yeah.
Nicholas Gordon was an Irish immigrant who came to Rhode Island in 1836 and upon his arrival started to sell alcohol by the bottle. It didn't take long before Nicholas figured out that he could make a lot more money if he sold the alcohol by the glass instead. Sounds like he was married to a Kayla who was like, bruh,
dude,
we can make like 10 times this amount, maybe 100 times. Stick with me. We'll see how this goes. You're a man, so I have no rights, but you listen to me.
Yeah.
Which honestly is how I think most things went back then.
Just saying.
I mean, the man is the head, but the woman is the neck. And she can turn the head whichever way she wants. If you don't know My Big Fat Greek Wedding, good. Just turn this podcast off and go watch it.
Just put some Windex on it.
Just put some Windex on it. God, I love that movie so much. It's one of my favorite movies. When she goes, but he's a vegetarian. And she goes, I make you lamb. And she goes, but he's a vegetarian. So what that mean? He doesn't eat. You don't eat no meat? She goes, it's fine. I'll make you lamb.
A bun. What is this?
They put a potted plant in the middle of it. Oh gosh, so funny. Anyways,
this is why Kayla and I are friends, because we speak in movie quotes.
If you've not seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, it is one of the best movies.
It is so off the wall.
It is so, but it's so good and so like. It honestly, watching it when I was little, I was like, I want to be Greek.
It's like so much fun.
They're like they're almost akin. Do not be offended, people. They're almost akin to Italian families. How they're very close knit and very like traditional and
right. And what you see in movies and that sort of thing.
But
yes, just loud and
My Big Fat
part
Greek
of the
Wedding
family
is the best.
Like when you see mob movies and stuff like that. Just
it's the best.
even like in Hop, like the little mice were the mob family.
They're so cute. I always think of not Hop, but
not Hop. It wasn't Hop. It wasn't Hop.
No.
It was Zootopia.
And they're they're moles.
Yeah,
they're moles.
Mice,
they're not.
moles,
Yeah. Well, it's even funnier that they're moles and they're in the mafia.
And they're yeah. Sorry.
Because it's she.
Yeah.
Oh my God. She goes.
That's what I meant.
Oh my God. You saved me from that giant donut. She goes.
You said no business on my wedding day.
And she goes, oh my gosh, I love your dress. And she goes, thank you.
Yeah, so cute. So, y'all, we go from animation to...
Later on, she's pregnant, and she goes, it's a girl. I'm naming her Judy. And she goes, oh.
Y'all, so cute. Again, go see Zootopia.
Zootopia is
There's
precious.
also a sloth in it. I'm just saying. And his name is Flash.
Zootopia is...
It's a good movie.
It's classic. So it's another one of those too that has so many innuendos in it. Like when they go to the club where Cheech and Chong, they voice the yak. They go and
the yoga stuff.
Yeah. And they go. He's like, we're free range here, and they go into the back, and all the animals don't have any clothes on, and she's like, oh my gosh. Anyways.
And like it's just animals,
and they're just animals to us. Yeah, it's funny.
Go watch it, people.
Judy Hopps. I can't.
I'm sorry, we got off on a little.
It was going to happen. So, anyways, our friend Nicholas Gordon, he applied for a tavern license and he was approved. Business was booming and he was able to pay for the rest of his family to come over from Ireland. On June 19th of 1843, Nicholas's mother, Ellen, his sister, Margaret, his brothers, Robert, William, and John, and William's William's daughter, Margaret, yep,
You sure?
who
Are you
was
sure?
7 at the time, came along. Well, the celebration, unfortunately, did not last long because Amasa Sprague started complaining around town that his Irish workers were drinking before and on the job. He said they were late to work, not coming in at all, or coming in drunk. He was losing money because of the downturn in productivity, and more employees were getting injured.
That's not good.
Sprague set his sights on Nicholas and his tavern in July of 1843, but it wasn't Nicholas who was serving the workers. This didn't matter much to Sprague, and he got Nicholas's liquor license revoked.
Uh-oh.
After all, Sprague used to be in city government, and he had money, so it was pretty simple for him to do this.
Yeah.
Nicholas knew that it was another man in the town by the name of Job Wilbur, who was serving the mill workers, and Wilbur was actually the one to blame. Because Wilbur didn't even have a liquor license, and he was selling alcohol to the mill workers illegally.
He was under the table.
Not only by the glass, but by the bottle. Nicholas lost everything just after his family made it to the States. On New Year's Eve of 1843, Amasa Sprague left his mansion to go check on the furnace at the mill and his cattle. But he would never make it. Instead, he was attacked and beaten so badly that he was almost not recognized by the time he was found. Sprague's cattle were located on a farm near the Johnston-Cranston town line, and it was on the bridge that connected the two towns that the attack occurred. Sprague was shot and beaten. It would be a few hours before one of Sprague's employees, who was walking home from working at the mansion, found him on the bridge. He didn't even recognize that it was his employer of several years due to the amount of damage to his face.
That is a beating.
An examination of the body showed that Sprague had been shot in the wrist and then hit twice on the head, fracturing his skull.
Shot in the wrist. I mean, that's...
Well, so he must have been putting his arm in front of his
must
face.
have.
It was one of the 2 blows to the head that likely caused his death. However, I have a hard time believing that this is all that happened when it said he wasn't recognizable. That's only 2 hits to the head. That doesn't make sense to me. So,
yeah. Yeah.
The following day, a town meeting was held, but of course, you were only allowed if you owned property, and community watch committees were formed in several school districts to investigate. The Sprague family offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of the murderer. Sprague's murder was originally thought to be a political assassination by Dorr's followers, the Dorrites.
Which would make sense.
But since the arrest of their leader, the Dorrites had gone into hiding. A number of individuals had personal grudges against Amasa Sprague, and it only is natural to assume that the killer was one of them. There was one name that kept coming up, though, and that was Nicholas Gordon. The Providence Journal ran several negative stories about the Gordon family, and Nicholas was arrested almost immediately after. There wasn't any evidence to suggest that Nicholas was even in the area at the time. And to make matters worse, the day after Nicholas was arrested, his brothers John, Robert, and William, a family friend named Michael O'Brien, and Nicholas's mother Ellen were all arrested as well.
Oh my heavens.
Why? Because why not? And if that doesn't sound crazy enough.
Crazy's not the word.
Crazy is the word. The family dog was taken into custody as well.
That's absurd. Absurd is the word.
So crazy's still the word.
No, absurd.
There were paw prints in the snow discovered by Sprague's body, and the authorities wanted to match the paw prints. I find it a bit rude that we are not given the name of the dog.
I mean, he deserves or she. We don't even know.
I'm going to say he was a good boy. So he's
or
a
good
boy.
girl.
So he's a good boy. The Gordon family's house was searched because it was believed that Nicholas had a gun and there wasn't one found in the house. Tracks in the snow near the murder scene had led to a swamp where a coat and a broken gun were found. The gun was identified as, allegedly, belonging to Nicholas Gordon. The coat had a hole in the elbow, and a shirt found in the Gordon home also had a bloody stain in the elbow corresponding to the hole in the coat. According to the Providence Journal, quote, 2 men were seen going toward the fatal spot shortly before the murder. 2 men were seen to emerge from the swamp on the other side after the deed had been committed, one of them without his coat. Nicholas, John, and William were kept in custody for the murder of Amasa Sprague, while everyone else, including the dog, most importantly, were released. Just making sure everybody knows the dog was fine. Paul F. Caranci wrote The Hanging and Redemption of John Gordon, the true story of Rhode Island's last execution. And like I said, he also wrote the article that I sourced at the top. He made a list of several issues with the investigation, and he did such a great job on them. I mean, he literally wrote the book on it. So why try to reproduce a great thing? The following is from that article, which is linked in the show notes. Here is a partial list of questionable police methods.
Okay, I'm ready.
1.
Listening.
Based on a biased newspaper article that appeared in the anti-Irish Catholic Providence Journal, tens of untrained, unskilled volunteers flooded the criminal scene in search of clues that might convict the Gordon family.
What was the name of the journal?
Providence. But it was an anti-Irish Catholic journal, but it was called the Providence Journal.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I thought the name of it was anti. No. Okay.
No.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That was just their byline.
Okay. Okay. I was like, whoa, that is, wow. Okay. I'm sorry.
Only footprints in the snow that led from the murder scene of the murder to Gordon's home were measured and tracked. All others were trampled, altered, or ignored. The family dog was arrested in a foolhardy attempt to match the dog's paw prints to the paw prints found in the snow at the spot of the murder. The brother of the victim resigned his seat in the U.S. Senate to lead the investigation.
Whoa.
Evidence was taken to the Sprague mansion for safekeeping rather than the sheriff's office, thereby destroying any semblance of an appropriate chain of custody. The blood-stained coat found near the scene of the murder was so big that it wrapped around the body of John Gordon, yet it was alleged in court to have been belonging to him, as a witness said that she saw him wearing it in the past.
Who was this witness?
A gun belonging to Nicholas Gordon was alleged to be the murder weapon simply because investigators did not find Nicholas's gun, which at the time of the first search of his store was in plain view behind the counter. There were other abnormalities associated with the investigation of Amasa Sprague's murder, most of which point to the preconceived conclusion driving the investigation rather than an impartial investigation arriving at a justifiable conclusion, which essentially says we're picking a person and making the facts fit rather than finding the facts and then finding a person.
This doesn't seem like a fair and just trial at all.
The wonderful Paul Caranci didn't stop there, though. He also compiled examples of just how terrible the trial went. The following is also from him. The trial was so fraught with prejudice and anti-Catholic Irish bias.
Get your mouth right.
Well, it's kind of a tongue twister.
It kind of is. It kind of is.
There are a few examples. A decision was made to try William and John Gordon together, meaning that the evidence presented against one brother could not be used against the other. The gun found in pieces at the murder scene was assumed to belong to Nicholas Gordon simply because investigators failed to find Nicholas Gordon's gun when they searched his store. The judge allowed this evidence to stand and was the basis for John's conviction.
Crazy.
It was assumed that Nicholas's gun was in the hands of John Gordon on the day of the murder, despite no credible evidence to support that fact. A sex worker testified that she was much more than a casual acquaintance of John and William Gordon, having shopped in Nicholas's store several times a week for several months. When asked by defense counsel to identify them, she misidentified John and William as William and John.
Interesting.
The testimony of many witnesses for the prosecution contradicted the testimony of other prosecution witnesses, while tens of defense witnesses offered consistent testimony, which included an alibi for the Gordon brothers who, that day, were attending a christening miles away from the murder scene. Despite that, the judge instructed the jury to put more weight on the testimony of the Yankee witnesses and less on the testimony of the Irish witnesses. John and William had only been in the country for 6 months before Sprague was murdered, and without their brother holding a grudge, there really wasn't a motive. The prosecutors were allowed to wildly speculate in establishing the brothers' conspiracy, including testimony of alleged threats made by Nicholas against Amasa Sprague. The prosecution proved that Nicholas Gordon did own a rifle and it was now missing. John Gordon had been seen holding the rifle. The coat was identified as belonging to Nicholas, but had been more recently seen as the dog's bed instead. John had also been seen wearing the coat. The trial lasted 9 days. The jury deliberated for an hour and 15 minutes before returning their verdicts. John Gordon was guilty and William Gordon not guilty. When the verdict was read, John Gordon turned to his brother and said, "It is you, William, that have hung me."
Oh.
No one really knew what this meant until 9 months later.
Oh, no. That sounds interesting.
On October 13th of 1845, it was not a Friday the 13th, unfortunately. Nicholas's trial began. Since he had been the focal point of his brother's trial, his pretty much went the same way. The difference was that just as his threats were used against John and William, John's conviction was used against Nicholas. His trial also lasted for 9 days, but ended in a hung jury, 8 for conviction and 4 for acquittal. Before Nicholas's second trial and just prior to John's execution, William revealed the real reason that Nicholas's rifle was missing. When William first learned of Amasa Sprague's murder, he hid the rifle and pistol owned by Nicholas under the floorboards of the attic in their house. He thought it would keep suspicion away from Nicholas, but as we have seen, that is not what happened.
Nice.
John learned what his brother had done during the trial, and that is why John blamed William for his conviction.
Wow.
Regardless of the new information, John Gordon's sentence was carried out, and he was hanged February 14th, 1845 on Valentine's Day.
I was going to say, that was not a very happy Valentine.
John Gordon's execution was not public, but there were over 60 witnesses in the yard and the state prison in Providence.
I'm very glad it was not public. Let's not have public executions.
That didn't prevent over 1,000 people from gathering on the hillside nearby, though, and they were able to see over the prison walls.
I do not understand the morbid fascination with executions. I don't get it.
Well,
I don't get it.
John Gordon's last words were, quote, "I hope all good Christians will pray for me." More than 1,500 Irishmen joined the funeral procession to the North Burial Ground in Providence. Some had come from as far away as Massachusetts and Connecticut to protest the injustice of the execution. Instead of following a direct route to the cemetery, the procession turned down Benefit Street, where it would pass the State House and several aristocratic homes before going to the burial site.
Good.
In a form of protest.
Good for them. Good for them.
Nicholas's second trial began April 7th of 1845. The defense did not use the information about the hidden guns because it would have meant putting William on the stand again. His answers on cross-examination could not be predicted. Instead, they attacked the credibility of the prosecution's witness, who were now not as sure of their stories as they had told in the 6 months earlier. But the result was basically the same. There was a hung jury, this time 3 for conviction and 9 for acquittal. Nicholas was not tried again for the murder, and he did not have a third trial. Nicholas Gordon was released on bail, but lived under constant threat of another trial. He died in debt on October 22nd of 1846, just 17 months after his second acquittal.
What a miserable life.
William Gordon was later sentenced to debtor's prison for unrelated issues on June 18th of 1850. In 2011, 166 years later, a resolution requesting the posthumous pardon of John Gordon was passed by the Rhode Island Senate and House of Representatives. On June 29th of 2011, Governor Lincoln, I think it's Chafee,
don't ask me, man,
granted the pardon. The ceremony was held in the same exact room where John Gordon was tried and convicted.
Wow.
The real killers of Amasa Sprague have never been identified. Paul Caranci had some ideas on others who should have been questioned. Caranci is quick to say that he did not speculate anyone in his book due to the passage of time. But here is the list of people in the article that he thinks should have received a second look. Number 1, Big Peter Dolan. Peter worked in the Sprague mill and was no fan of Amasa. And just a few days before the murder, Sprague fired him for destroying the loom where his nephew's fingers were torn off.
Oh.
Dolan had been described as an angry man, and he was big. The blood-stained coat found at the scene of the murder while wrapping around John Gordon would have fit Big Pete quite nicely.
I mean, his name is Big Pete. People named Big Pete. It
Bigger
just
guys.
would make sense that he could, if he was hit twice, he could do some big damage
Just saying.
from Big Pete.
Peter Dolan disappeared the day after the murder and was not seen by anyone in Rhode Island again.
And he disappeared after the murder.
There is speculation that he moved to Pennsylvania, where he, while on his deathbed, confessed to his priest that he committed the crime.
Oh, a confession?
Then there was Miss Fenner and her husband. It was widely speculated at the time that Amasa Sprague was having an affair with Miss Fenner, who owned a boarding house in Johnston, just on the other side of the bridge where the murder took place. Was Amasa Sprague murdered by Fenner's husband, who learned about the illicit relationship? There was Fanny Sprague. Could the murder have been arranged by Fanny Sprague, who was Amasa's wife after she learned of the affair?
Can I tell you, I can never look at the name Fanny the same way again now that I know that in Britain it's slang for something else. Okay, sorry, continue.
Number 4, William Barker and Bowen Spencer. These two friends testified that they were near the scene of the crime and saw John and William Gordon both before and after the murder. However, because other witnesses were talking with William Gordon miles from the murder at the same time, their testimony was clearly falsified. No one bothered to question these two men who placed themselves in the vicinity of the murder at the time the murder was committed. And the last, William Sprague himself. Charles and Tess Hoffman, in their book Brotherly Love, Murder and the Politics of Prejudice in 19th Century Rhode Island, argue that Amasa was murdered by his own brother.
What?
William and Amasa disagreed on the expansion of their mill empire. Amasa believed that the expansion would be a mistake if the economy faltered. William disagreed, and the two fought openly about the issue. Just days after Amasa's murder, William resigned his seat in the U.S. Senate to lead the investigation into his brother's murder. What better way to ensure that speculation never led in his direction? Ironically,
that is clever.
Once in control of the mill empire, William did expand beyond what a declining economy could have handled, and he was forced into bankruptcy several years later.
Dun, dun, dun.
As it sits today, the murder of Amasa Sprague is likely one of Rhode Island's longest continuing cold cases, and John Gordon's execution was the last in Rhode Island history.
Really?
And that is the case of John Gordon's execution.
My money's on Big Pete.
I think it could be Big Pete.
My money's on him.
Who knows? I think there's a lot of good.
Big Pete or his own brother.
Yeah.
Or maybe, Big Pete is in cahoots with the brother.
Could have been hired by the brother to do it.
I say brother hired Big Pete.
Could have been.
That's what
Or
I say.
it could have been, could have been his lover's husband. So you never know.
Or the wife.
Could have
the wife, either the brother or the wife hired Big Pete.
Could have been.
I think Big Pete did the deed, but maybe somebody hired Big Pete to do the deed.
Because why would he go missing? I don't know. It's very weird. Very interesting. Yeah. So
I think Big Pete actually did it, but I'm speculating that somebody hired him to do it. Either his brother or his wife hired Big Pete.
I think most likely.
That's what I say.
So you're not going to find the answer to the cold case on our website, but you can find our website.
Yep.
And that is onenationundercrime.com. We are on One Nation Under Crime on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and at ONUC Pod on Twitter. We know you love our podcast because you have made it this far. So go on to Apple Podcast or wherever you find our podcast and give us a 5-star review.
Yes.
Please, 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 please refer us to every single person you know.
Yep.
Share anything of ours on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Share something of ours, like anything that you want to do.
Yep. Tell everybody how great we are. I mean, we know, you know, the world deserves to know.
So we do have a Patreon, and if you would like to help with the cost of hosting and making the show, we would greatly appreciate it. Just go to patreon.com and search for One Nation Under Crime. Thank you guys for listening.
Yes.
To this week's episode of One Nation Under Crime. We will see you here, same time.
Different crime.
Next week. And remember, there isn't always liberty and justice for all, especially if you're an Irish Catholic in the 1800s.
Nope.
Goodbye.
Bye.